Here we go. The episode's 3 seasons, 3 years in the making have finally arrived. The 3-week Amphibia finale kicks off with the 3 armies and the beginning of the end. Paying off the entirety of the series as Anne and Sasha bring together the frogs, newts, and toads for the fight of their lives. A fight that has one of King Andrias' coldest moments yet with that Madara Uchiha flow, while the Calamity Trio has an unsettling reunion when Anne and Sasha come face to face with Darcy. It's going to be an insane couple of weeks with the show and our coverage of it on the channel, and it all begins with our breakdown of these 2 episodes for the biggest details we caught. And to stay in the loop with the mayhem, subscribe to the Roundtable with notifications on so you never miss a video. And for dope merch, be sure to check out Toon Drip, link down below. Also, since we got this breakdown out pretty fast the day it premiered on TV, consider leaving us a tip through the new thanks feature. No pressure, but I'm just letting you know it's there now, and I like money. I'm sorry, I'm on my Mr. Krabs arc. But we still have quality control. Now on to the show. Starting with the 3 armies. Sasha and Anne hold a meeting for the rebellion, relaying to the frogs they've received intel that King Andrias plans to begin his invasion on Earth in just a few days. With limited time on their hands, it's time for the frogs, newts, and toads to come together as a team and put a stop to the Leviathan Empire once and for all. Unfortunately, the frogs are not exactly enthused like Anne and Sasha, reluctant to work with any newts or toads, because as Hop Hop tries to explain, only for Graham to interrupt him, proving a part of the problem in the process, frogs, newts, and toads don't have the greatest track record of getting along and seeing one another as equals. A system put in place by King Andrias after Leaf's betrayal, as shown to us in The Core and the King. Feeling let down by Beryl and having his trust absolutely shattered by Leaf, Andrias decided that newts would be favored among the amphibians, whereas toads were regarded as a bit more disposable yet respectable, assigned to tasks such as guarding villages from monsters and eventually just being given general brute work on top of oppressing frogs. A class that would get no respect at all, despite their contribution to Amphibia as gardeners and farmers. The fractured relationships between a newt, toad, and frog led to the messed up hierarchy they have today. And by the end of this episode, we see the amphibians come together to pick up the pieces, forming mutual respect for one another and putting their differences aside for the sake of their future. I also like how Toadstool and Duckweed chime in and make sure it's known they aren't happy in Wartwood. I mean, yeah, Duckweed's just an overcritical dickhead, and Toadstool has always been on his green Mr. Krabs arc, plotting on how to exploit the villagers of Wartwood. That's not to say either is completely heartless or has no attachment to the frogs, but as Toadstool put it, there's been bumps in the road. Anne equates uniting feuding factions to the time she patched up beef between the school band and the track team, something that initially elicits the confused math lady meme out of Sasha, but she's quick to recognize that Anne is pretty good at helping others find common ground. The toads and newts arrive, walking past the entrance to Wartwood that now just reads, "Welcome to War." A joke I swear I saw someone making a meme or fan art when season 3B was starting up, so whoever that was, I hope they're feeling like a galaxy brain genius right now. And part of me wonders if Wartwood was named such a thing early on with the endgame in mind, hoping to someday reach this shot. Maybe I'm just thinking too deep about it though. However, it's definitely something I would do if I had a cartoon. They should let me make one of those. Tritonio and Beatrix are ready to square up at the mere sight of one another, but are easily derailed by the opportunity to bully Hop Hop, once again reinforcing how frogs are regarded as lesser than in the eyes of both newts and toads. A little shortly after, Tritonio questions how they could smooth over 900 years of conflict in a single day. And considering Andrias lost the music box 1,000 years ago, I think this proves that the prejudice frogs, newts, and toads hold against one another didn't form instantly, but rather was a gradual thing. I actually wouldn't be surprised if Beryl tried to keep the peace while he was alive, but once he kicked the bucket, it was his descendants and those who were around him that began to form and embrace a grudge against frogs, while also resenting newts, as they were largely pampered while toads were essentially being sent out to die. But that's just me spitballing. Anne puts her best foot forward to mediate tensions between the 3 armies, while they put their heads together and form a good strategy to steal the Calamity Box from Andrias. Beatrix has a straightforward approach of bursting onto the scene with good old fisticuffs and taking the box by force. However, Tritonio critiques this idea and proposes playing 4D chess, manipulating their way to the box by masquerading as orphans, but Sasha shoots down that idea as their opponents are mainly going to be soulless robots. And Hop Pop's idea isn't heard at all, and I'm going to be honest, I do think they lean into Hop Pop being dunked on by Tritonio and Beatrix in this episode, so that it'll be even more poetic if or when Hop Pop, a frog, makes a grand sacrifice in the final battle. A sacrifice that could turn the tides for the resistance. And tries to indulge the resistance in team building exercises, but everything keeps going horribly wrong, creating further rifts between the three classes as things spiral into further, hilariously chaotic insanity. But as the situation goes from bad to worse and reaches a breaking point, overwhelmed with frustration, she erupts into calamity mode. And I'm not just talking about some glowing blue eyes, a little coating of aura, or hovering off the ground for a few minutes like she has basically every time she's become Superman since the events of True Colors. Save for Escape to Amphibia, but even her appearance there lacked the branches and leaves in her hair. No, I'm talking a full power transformation that leaves everyone astounded and literally knocked off their feet. The amphibians are absolutely shook to their core, some of them looking like they reached a horrifying epiphany that their religion is wrong because God is right in front of them and she is angry. And basically tells everyone off and gives up on trying to make them work together. Such a responsibility is beneath her now, though she is crushed that she couldn't get them to cooperate, breaking down to Sasha behind closed doors. A little bit later, the two are seen strategizing a new plan, when Hop Pop, Beatrix, and Tritonio all enter the room together with a proposal. Hop Pop's original plan, one that hears out both Beatrix and Tritonio. The resistance will storm the castle as means of a distraction, allowing for a smaller but stronger B team to infiltrate the corridors and retrieve the music box while Andrias is distracted. Anne and Sasha recognize the plan from a movie Marcy loved and constantly try to get her friends to watch, War of the Warlocks. But if that strategy came from something Marcy is very familiar with, then we already know Darcy will be fully anticipating it. But of course, Anne and Sasha don't even know that Darcy is a thing, so they naively roll with the plan. But before they can write down the plan, they have a surprise visitor, Mother Ohm, who must have traveled from Proteus all the way to the underground Wartwood. Granny's got guts. Mother Ohm reveals that the Ohms of Proteus can feel the tremors of Andrias' army, and there's no doubt that the invasion truly begins tonight. It's go time. Everyone armors up, preparing for the end. But before we cover the beginning of the end, it's time for this week's fan spotlight. I can't believe we're almost done with these already.
Find myself in the wild unknown with the frogs and toads, and I'm far from home. But there's so much here to discover. One leap after another. Hop into the adventure, gotta rivet, jump on it.
You know it's going to be a heavy episode of Amphibia when it opens with a flashback of the girls on Earth. And the beginning of the end is definitely no exception. This episode has a huge focus on the state of Anne, Sasha, and Marcy's friendship after the shocking revelation that Marcy's the reason they ended up in Amphibia, trapping the girls in this dangerous world, dimensions away from home, on purpose to avoid moving away with her family. This flashback sets the stage perfectly as we see one of Marcy's many attempts to get Anne and Sasha to watch the aforementioned War of the Warlocks movie. And with a direct look at it, it's pretty obvious that War of the Warlocks is a parody of Lord of the Rings. We can even make out the Eye of Sauron in the background. Now, I'm gonna be on the Marcy defense force for this episode because I already have seen a lot of people state that how Marcy's friendship with with Anne and Sasha is portrayed here comes across as inconsistent with what we've been shown before. And this could not be further from the truth. As someone who heavily relates to Marcy as a character, recognizing a lot of my childhood and even high school self in her, where Anne is coming from in this episode in regards to their treatment of Marcy is not only true to life, but had the seeds planted for such a thing all over the series. I've seen a lot of people go, Anne has always shown to be overprotective of Marcy and always looking out for her. How was she neglectful of Marcy? Which overlooks the point being made completely. While it's clear Anne and Sasha like spending time with Marcy and looked out for her, they still failed to reciprocate interest in her hobbies to the point of straight up disrespect, and that can be very damaging to friendships. Equating it to my own experiences, I formed a lot of friendships throughout my life with people I cherish dearly. However, those I've ended up becoming the closest with are those who take an interest in my hobbies, including the media I consume. Why? Because they know it's important to me. The hobbies we like are little pieces of us, and sharing that with our friends is sharing pieces of ourselves. And I'm not saying watching every episode of every show I like or playing every video game I've played is how you truly be a good friend, but I am saying just entertaining those interests while spending time with me helped me and my friends bond. I had friends who barely watched Steven Universe show up to watch the movie with me alongside other friends who were into the series back when the movie premiered in 2019. I had friends who didn't watch a single Marvel movie watch Infinity War and Endgame with me when those dropped because they knew I was excited for them. Those have become cherished memories. Chances are you're emotionally invested in Amphibia and identify yourself in one of these characters. That's part of the reason you keep coming back for more, right? That's part of the reason why this show may have become important to you, right? Well, all of that applies to Marcy. If you're an animation fan in particular, it might be hard to show friends who are into the medium a show you really care about, especially the older you get, because they just won't care, even if you do resonate with it. But imagine having that happen with all of your interest. That lack of bonding, that lack of a deeper connection is what Marcy has been experiencing her whole friendship with Anne and Sasha before Amphibia. It doesn't mean there are never parts of their friendship that were good, but when your closest friends basically treat you as a walking klutz with no captivating interest, it's going to heavily affect you. We pointed out in our True Colors breakdown that Sasha couldn't even acknowledge Marcy's text over a cool bug she found. That was an intentional inclusion on the crew's end. We saw when Anne and Marcy reunited in Utopia that as Marcy began to go on a tangent about her favorite video game and how it related to her current situation, Anne just kinda gave Marcy a blank stare, showing her lack of interest in the topic. A moment they call back to here as when Marcy tries to hype up the exciting third act of the film, Anne gives the exact same reaction. And Sasha straight up states that she doesn't care. It wasn't until Anne was separated from Marcy for months and found her in Utopia that she took the initiative to take a bigger part in her interests instead of dismissing them altogether. Their friendship was stronger than ever because you never know what you have until it's gone. Say what you want about this episode, but calling anything about it inconsistent couldn't be further from the truth. The biggest display of this is when Sasha derails the movie with a pillow fight, and after things simmer down, Marcy is excited that her friends have finally reached her favorite part of the movie, only to see that they fell asleep yet again. Marcy brushing off her sadness, tucking her friends in, and intently watching the film, reciting it line by line. The themes of friendship prevalent in the film, lining her from the crushing reality of her friendship. The resistance has been fully assembled, even with Lysel and Angwin pulling up. We love that. They all go over the battle strategy one last time, and prepare to head off into battle, Grime wanting to rock out some music before pulling up on Andrias. Between this and the Batman, I'm loving the representation of characters jamming to tunes before throwing hands. Approaching the battlefield, Sasha and Anne finally talk about Marcy's actions around the Calamity Box and luring the three of them into Amphibia. Sasha doesn't know the friendship is salvageable after such a messed up act, which honestly is completely reasonable. But of course, Anne champions forgiveness, arguing that they may have overlooked Marcy's needs and made her feel isolated. Again, something I can relate to. which of course is a sentiment Sasha is thrown off by, because as the person overlooking Marcy's interest the most, she never even noticed that Marcy was bothered by their lack of interest. Andrias has Tuxedo Frobo serving him drinks such as sparkling cider, a classic I may add, but before he can even take a single refreshing sip, the horns of the resistance sound off in the distance, although he does get some sips in a little bit after. The front line of Andrias' army consists of mind-controlled beasts and various robot models, including a new Knight Frobo model. Now, I know I've made numerous comparisons to the Frobos and Egg Fighters from Sonic Unleashed, but come on! This is identical to the Knight variation of Egg Fighters in that game, color palette and all. I absolutely adore it. They just have lances instead of swords. Croaker has some very poetic words to serve as a battle cry. Are we going to let our past steal our future? Which just defines Amphibia in so many ways. How the core wants to uphold the twisted status quo, where the Leviathan Empire reigns supreme. Or how these amphibians worked out their own differences in order to secure their future. And how Anne, Sasha, and Marcy also need to work through their past mistakes and toxic behaviors in order for their friendship to come out stronger than ever. And as they all charge into battle, you can see Grubhog within the big Lord of the Rings shot, paying off one of the funniest gags in season 1 3 years later. I also love how Andrias is surprised by the magnitude of the resistance. Although it's played for comedic value, I think he really is astounded at the sight of frogs, newts, and toads working together in such large quantities for the first time in over 1,000 years. Anne and Sasha continue to discuss Marcy as they infiltrate Utopia Castle, and sticking by the fact that they shouldn't focus strictly on what Marcy did, but why she did it. A line that really highlights Anne's growth over the series as she puts herself in Marcy's shoes. After all, she stole the music box from the thrift shop, and it's not like she was shoplifting from some mega corporation like Walmart, but a local ma and pop shop. But of course, that wrongdoing was never the focus of the story. 1, because she's a kid, she's going to make bad decisions, and 2, it was never about what Anne did, it was about why Anne did it. And she did it to appease Sasha and Marcy, because she felt pressured and was scared of losing her friends. Anne empathizes with Marcy, her journey through Amphibia having her recognize her own shortcomings, and how the fear of losing the people you love can cause you to act on impulse, keeping secrets, and do irrational things. Coming full circle with Anne glancing at Hop Hop as she tells Sasha that although forgiveness isn't easy, it's worth it, calling back to their brief falling out during the temple arc after Hop Hop confessed to burying the Calamity Box as a means of protection. And of course, Anne points out her own relationship with Sasha and the growth it's had through working out their problems and learning to forgive. And yeah, you guys know I don't really care that much for shipping, but the shipping vibes in this moment, down to Brenda's song's delivery, they were throwing the shippers a bone for sure. But before they can reach the box, we have a mini boss fight as Yunin and Olivia rear their heads for the first time since their self-titled episode, meeting the unfortunate fate of having spore collars on their neck, succumbing to mind control as a result. The two are perfectly in sync, which is oddly adorable as it just goes to show how great of a match these two are for each other, but in these circumstances, it makes them deadly more than anything. Back on the battlefield, we have a cameo from Bella the Bellhop, and I truly can't tell if they brought Christian Shaolin for a single stream, or if it's recycled from the Planner's Check-In, or one of Mabel's many screams from Gravity Falls. It could really be any of those. Bella kicking ass though, which had me punching the air, screaming at the top of my lungs in excitement. Everyone has a little moment in this fight. Apothecary Gary overrides the spore controller with his own mushroom, taking control of a giant worm. Lago goes head to head with a robot. Lysel and Angwin devour a robot with what felt like a Naruto storm finisher. And Wally has his life saved by Leaf's Mossman. The same Mossman that Wally and Anne encountered back in their self-titled episode in season 1. God, that episode hits so different on rewatch. Seriously, check it out sometime with the context of seasons 2 and 3 in mind. However, the resistance and their own badassery is cut short by King Andrias Andrias' arrival on the battlefield, a moment that mirrors the arrival of Madara Uchiha on the 4th Great Ninja Wars battlefield in Naruto, and even to an extent, that moment in the Namek saga of Dragon Ball when Frieza finds the Z Fighters after having his own plans foiled. And I won't lie, Keith David's delivery in this moment had me hyped to an immeasurable degree. This man needs to be voicing every villain out there. I do not care. He knows how to be suave yet intimidating, even when voicing a giant blue salamander. Back at the castle, Anne and Sasha decide to fight fire with fire, fighting in sync by busting out their own super dance fusion choreography, calling back to the flashback reunion where the Dance Dance Revolution-like game was one of the festivities they partook in on Anne's birthday. They successfully liberate Olivia and Yunin, whom try to warn the group that what awaits them beyond the door is not Marcy, but an entirely new individual. However, the girls are confident and storm into the room, finding the Calamity Box alone on its podium. But it's a ruse, a trap by the core, which has managed to completely entangle the throne room with its mechanical tentacles, illuminating the area to reveal Darcy awaiting them. Again, anticipating such a plan, as is a tactic Marcy has committed to memory. Darcy chastises Anne and Sasha by stating Marcy is no longer their friend, and from their perspective, it seems like they never were. However, I would actually take this at face value, as Aldrich and the core also tried to coerce Andrias into seeing the worst of Beryl and Leaf, so it's pretty clear that your friendship is already skewed and should not be accounted for. Darcy crushes the rebellion's hopes by showing their heroes defeated, forcing them to retreat, which yeah, it was kind of a bummer to see the resistance give up after spending so much time throughout season 3B building up their army, but with there being 90 minutes of the series left, it's pretty obvious they're going to bounce back stronger than ever during the last leg of their fight. Plus, we still have the whole moon hurtling towards Amphibia thing to deal with, so yeah, they're gonna pop up again. Also, let's be honest, if the commander, demigod, former Toad commander, top of the Newtopia army, and face of a previous rebellion are all shown in peril, it makes sense for the army, who were barely holding their own against Andrias, to try and save as many lives as possible by retreating and waiting things out before making another move. After all, didn't Sasha just do the exact same thing in Sasha's Angels? Trust in the process, look at the bigger picture. That's all I'm saying. Anne discovers that the core is just as clueless about the Calamity Box and its stones as she is. Darcy, wanting to finish the job, desires to kill Anne right there on the spot to avoid the risk of her power tampering with the stones and their plans. Which, I love the writing decision to have the Calamity Stones remain these mysterious entities from beyond. Not everything needs an answer, and sometimes the answer makes it a little less exciting, so they made the right call here. However, Anne manages to outsmart the core due to this uncertainty, arguing that killing Anne may cause the box's power to cease altogether due to the link. We also have another seed planted for Andrias' inevitable turn against the core, as he tries to hype them up, only to be shut down. Unable to reach a consensus within the core, Darcy decides to spare Anne's life for the moment and extract the power directly from her during the invasion, remarking they look forward to dissecting Anne alive, which has me terrified, because with only 2 episodes left after this, it's really now or never for the Anne loses her arm theorist. Darcy commands the guards to have everyone else fitted for the collars immediately, which has me thinking the first phase of next week's hour-long episode will see Anne break free from the core's clutches. But she'll immediately have to fight her spore-controlled friends. Anne versus Sasha round 3, Anne versus the Planters, Anne versus Grime. It's all so much to take in. With the resistance defeated, it's finally time for the Leviathans to make their move. Andrias activates the box once more, creating the biggest portal yet, as a blinding but colorful light pierces through every window and entrance of the castle. Andrias' army launching their invasion as they migrate from Amphibia to Los Angeles at a moment's notice. The random civilians line, "This is the big one," got me good, especially since I live here now, so my paranoid ass is always on my toes. And with the invasion's forces looming over LA, the beginning of the end comes to a close, taking us to the heartbreaking credits of Marcy watching War of the Warlocks alone, her theme playing within the movie. Can these special end credits leave my emotions alone? No? Okay. As always, we want to know what you guys thought about these episodes. Which segment did you enjoy more? And what are your predictions for next week's big battle on Earth? Stay tuned for our breakdown of the promo and poster, and be sure to give us a follow on Twitter and Instagram at AllStrickVox and at Roundtable Vids to keep the conversation going. Be sure to check out Toon Drip, and if you enjoyed this video, please sort of like, subscribe to the Roundtable for more great cartoon content, and will see you guys next time. See ya!